I flew back to Northport for Christmas, expecting the usual glow of lights on the porch, laughter spilling from the windows, and the loud chaos that always came with the Maxwell family. Instead, I pulled into an empty driveway. The house sat in darkness, curtains drawn tight like no one had touched them in weeks. It felt wrong before I even turned the key in the door. Inside, the air was freezing, the kind of cold that sets in only when a home has been abandoned too long. The living room was a black box, shadows hanging heavy, the only flicker of light coming from the muted television glow in the kitchen. And that's where I found him, Grandpa Walter, sitting at the table hunched over a plate, chewing slowly through a dry sandwich with nothing but a glass of tap water beside him. No turkey, no ham, no decorations, no tree, nothing that looked like Christmas. Just him. I thought maybe everyone had gone out for groceries. Maybe they were running late. But then I saw the note. A scrap of paper slapped onto the fridge with a magnet, scribbled in a hurry. Used your money for Disney. Watch him for the week. My jaw clenched as I read it twice. The money he had wired weeks earlier to help cover food and gifts, gone. They'd taken it for some last-minute theme park trip, leaving my 84-year-old grandfather behind without so much as a phone call to me. No text, no warning, just an assumption that I would show up, take over, and babysit. Babysit an old man they couldn't be bothered to feed. Grandpa didn't say much when I asked if he was okay. He just nodded, swallowed hard, then leaned forward in a voice barely above a whisper and said, "They'll regret this." One didn't get angry, not the way they thought I would. I didn't storm off or call anyone screaming. Instead, I made him a proper dinner. I turned the heat back on. I stripped his bed, gave him fresh sheets and extra pillows. For the next 3 days, I went through the house carefully. I checked bank statements. I scrolled through the Wi-Fi history. And most importantly, I reviewed the cameras I had quietly installed during my last visit in the spring. There were things they didn't know it prepared for, things they didn't expect me to uncover. 3 days later, just as Grandpa and I were finishing lunch, pounding rattled the front door. Voices shouted over each other: my brother Aaron, his wife Melissa, and my cousin Brooke. They were yelling, desperate, their words tumbling into one another. They had no idea what kind of storm they had just walked into. I let them knock for a while, let them sweat. Aaron's voice eventually rose above the others, loud, but trembling like he wasn't sure if he was more furious or afraid. Finally, I opened the door. They looked terrible. Sunburnt skin, sweaty clothes, bags under their eyes. Not a trace of the Disney magic they'd ditched Grandpa for. Melissa rushed forward, probably expecting me to collapse into her excuses or give her a hug. She started talking fast about a misunderstanding, about not knowing it actually show up. I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside. There on the couch sat Grandpa Walter, clean, warm, eating a steaming bowl of beef stew like royalty. He didn't even look at them, eyes locked on the television. The silence that filled the room hit harder than any words I could have thrown at them. That's when Brooke broke down crying. She rattled off excuses about their flight being delayed, their hotel booking falling through, how they thought the money I sent was a gift for the kids. They spun every lie they could grasp, but not one of them mentioned the note. Not one asked about Grandpa's health until nearly 5 minutes in. Aaron finally blurted out the truth: they were broke. Their accounts were frozen. Their rent was overdue. They had no groceries in their fridge. They had used my money and their own to book the trip, but now they needed help. A place to stay. A lifeline. I listened, let them tangle themselves in their web. Then I laid the trap. I told them about the cameras. Every recording since March. Every time they left Grandpa cold leftovers while ordering takeout for themselves in the car. Every time they refilled through his pill bottles. Every group chat message they didn't know since to the kitchen tablet. The color drained from their faces. The panic was no longer about hunger or rent. It was about exposure. about consequences. The tension in the room thickened until it felt suffocating. Brooke sobbed into her hands. Melissa paced like a caged animal. Aaron sat on the recliner, sweating, jaw locked. Through it all, Grandpa remained calm. Too calm. The kind of calm a man wears when he's already decided which side he's on. When their excuses finally sputtered to silence, Grandpa stood, walked slowly down the hall, and motioned for me to follow. He led me to the basement, where the air smelled of motor oil and damp wood. Shuffling to the far wall, he reached behind a stack of dusty toolboxes and pulled out a dented green tin box. He set it on the workbench and nodded for me to open it. Inside, stacks of papers, bank records, checks, letters, and a timeline typed neatly across nearly a decade. At first it didn't click, but then I saw it: the withdrawals, the forged signatures, the loans taken out in his name. They'd been bleeding him dry for years, using his social security number to open credit cards, taking payday loans they never intended to pay. One document showed Aaron as a co-signer on a reverse mortgage Grandpa never agreed to. The notary stamp was fake, courtesy of one of Brooke's friends who worked at a shipping store. And Grandpa, he knew, had been tracking it in silence, afraid to speak. They'd threatened him, said if he opened his mouth they'd put him in a nursing home, sell his house, cut him off from the grandkids. For a while, he believed them, until I started sending money last year. He used it to hire a lawyer. Quiet, careful, steady. Each month, he built his case piece by piece, waiting for the moment to strike. We returned upstairs, and I set the tin box on the coffee table. I opened it slowly, page by page. Their faces collapsed. Aaron went pale. Melissa dropped into a chair. Brooke mumbled something about not remembering any of it. Grandpa just looked at me and gave a single nod. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. Every document, every forged check, every fake receipt was another nail in their coffin. They realized they were cornered. Silence fell, heavy and final. Then Grandpa picked up the phone and called his lawyer. Calm as ever, he scheduled a meeting for the next morning. Told him the files were ready. That was the moment panic turned to begging. They swore they'd pay it back, swore it was a misunderstanding, a short-term fix. But there was nothing short-term about stealing a man's savings for nearly a decade. I pulled out an envelope. Inside was a notarized notice temporary power of attorney. Grandpa had signed it over to me weeks ago, in case this trip went wrong. Effective immediately, the house was off limits, the accounts frozen, the car reported stolen, the Wi-Fi cut, even the storage unit locked and inventoried. By the time they stepped outside, the locks had already been changed. My friend, a security tech, swapped them during the chaos. Grandpa followed me out to the porch and stood there, arms crossed, watching them pack into a car they couldn't legally drive anymore. Aaron turned, maybe to plead, maybe to threaten. Grandpa just raised a hand. Not a wave, just a stop sign. And that was the end of it. Also, I thought. The next morning, Brooke sent a long message accusing me of tearing the family apart, saying Grandpa needed forgiveness, not lawyers. I ignored it. Then Aaron sent a picture of the house from the sidewalk. No caption. He was still nearby. That night at 3:30 a.m., I woke to the sound of tapping glass. One of the side cameras had gone dark, cut wires. I peeked through the curtain and saw movement near the shed. One didn't call the police. I called my friend, the security patrol. He arrived in 6 minutes. The patrol lights hit the driveway just as Aaron was climbing the fence, red-handed. Hoodie, gloves, crowbar in one hand, gas can in the other. He said later he just wanted to scare us, wasn't really going to burn anything. But that didn't matter. It wasn't desperation, it was felony. The police came, pulled footage from a backup camera he missed on the neighbor's shed. Arrested without a fight. Melissa didn't bail him out. She called her mother, blaming stress, blaming manipulation. Brooke said nothing. Grandpa just sat at the kitchen table, nodding slowly like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. The court process moved fast. With the documents, the recordings, and the break-in, there was no wriggling free. Aaron was charged with attempted burglary, elder abuse, and identity theft. This time, there would be no slap on the wrist. Brooke and Melissa were questioned next. Turns out Grandpa's lawyer had already been in touch with state investigators. More victims came forward, other seniors, other relatives. It wasn't just Grandpa. They'd been running this con for years. When it was all over, I asked Grandpa if he wanted to leave, start over somewhere quiet. He shook his head. I built this house with my hands, he said. I'll die in it too. Weeks later, we sat on the porch. The street was calm. No strange cars. No tension every time someone knocked. He handed me an envelope, property transfer papers. The house, the land, everything. Filed already. He said it had almost been taken twice. Once by the bank. Once by his own blood. He wasn't going to let that happen again. I told him I didn't need it. I was just glad he was safe. But had already made up his mind. This house, he said, belongs to someone who shows up. It's been months since then. Aaron's trial made headlines. Melissa vanished into another state. Brooke cut a deal to cooperate. None of them have reached out since, and that's fine. Grandpa is stronger, healthier, even smiling again. I take him to doctor's appointments. We go for coffee twice a week. Sometimes he brings up the past, not with anger, but as a reminder of what people are capable of when they think no one is watching. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And if you've listened this far, you know why I tell these stories. Because not everyone gets the truth, the proof, and a second chance. We did. And remember, the next knock at the door could change everything.